My name's Thom Pollard. I'm from New Hampshire in the United States, and I'm going to talk to this amazing audience tonight about Mount Everest, in particular my search for Mallory and Irvine, and were they the first people to summit Mount Everest back in 1924. I was, of course, on the expedition that discovered the body of George Mallory in 1999, and I returned there recently to look for his partner on a National Geographic expedition, and I'm going to wow the audience tonight and hope you enjoy what I tell them tonight too. Thank you, appreciate it. It would stand to figure that because everybody here is involved their lives in the ocean and study, that they would invite someone to do a talk about Mount Everest. So I figured I'd throw in a shot of, I have been to the ocean. I did it, I was just like Rod. I kind of arrived in this expedition backwards, if you will. I came home from Mount Everest in 1999, was introduced by a TV reporter to meet this guy, Phil Buck, who was doing this incredible expedition, and he got me all excited, and I couldn't say no, so I had to do it. And that points me into the direction of a person who is an explorer or an adventurer is really seeking, more than anything, some spiritual transformation beyond just this really cool expedition, adventure. I mean, there's a thrill in that, but aren't we really all trying to transcend and move ourselves from one place where we started to another place of ascending and growing in this realm where we're meeting all these people. And so this readship was an opportunity for me to do something really out there and different, but as you know, my true love has been Mount Everest for many, many years. I fell in love with the mountain decades ago, and as a young kid knew about it, knew about Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, and always kind of wondered what it would be like to go up into the death zone and experience, you know, the grit and the cold and the suffering. And there was something that attracted to me about suffering and the pain. And I know it's like there's a lot of you out there as well that understand that sentiment. But in so pursuing Mount Everest and many of the other adventures that happen out there, we sacrifice a lot, you know, in order to follow our musical course, the thing that we truly love. If we're focused on that musical course, for me, we're willing to accept the collateral damage of the things that fall by the wayside as we pursue it. Relationships or a job, maybe a well-paying career, you know, and Everest was that for me. It doesn't make me even remotely a hero. It just makes me the kind of guy who I couldn't get that out of my mind. And so for years and years and years and years, I would produce little mini documentaries of my mountaineering epics on mountains around the world, hoping that somebody would notice what I could do. And as it would turn out, public broadcasting noticed me, and that's how I had an opportunity to get to know this gentleman here who passed in 1924. This is George Lee Mallory, a man who was singularly obsessed with summiting Mount Everest. Many people up until that point in the 1920s, most of the people in the world really believed that you would die. No matter what, you would die if you tried to go to the top of the mountain. That guy was the one who said, nope, I am going to prove that we can do this. So forward, Mallory goes, 1921 and 1922, 2 expeditions to look at the way that would make the best route to climb. Now we're talking in Tibet. You had to get permission from the Dalai Lama to go. And so here's this guy with 3 children, little kids at home, struggling to make a living, hoping that maybe he would become a professional writer someday, obsessed with the mountain. And then in 1924, he gets back for his 3rd expedition. This is going to be it. And he partners up with this young kid, Sandy Irvine, another Brit. this brilliant young kid, strong as an ox and willing to accept the consequences. We might die. Okay, I'm in. I mean, really, this is a we might die kind of thing. But the cool thing about Sandy is he understood how to fix these fickle oxygen bottles, this newfangled thing that supposedly if you could bring bottled oxygen with you and in essence get more oxygen into your body up at altitude, it might give you a better shot at summiting. So every time these dang oxygen bottles would break, and that they did, Sandy Irvine to the rescue, and he jury-rigged something, and lo and behold, they would work. So that pack that you see on the right, that weighs like 40 pounds, and it's going to deliver about 8 or 10 hours of oxygen. Not a lot, but a lot of weight. This is the last known photograph of George Mallory and Sandy Irvine, taken at about 7,200 meters on about June 5th, 1924. And this is the North Col. And on June 8th of that year, Noel Odell, one of the climbing partners of this team, looks up onto the ridge on the day that they were going to attempt the summit, and he notices two small figures climbing up above 8,500 meters, headed toward the summit. That was by far the highest any human being had ever been on a mountain before, and they were going for the top. And then, a moment later, clouds came in and obscured any view of these two figures moving upward. And that was it. They disappeared. Gone. Poof. Nobody ever heard from them again. 75 years. His children grow up wondering what happened. What did my dad do? Did he make it to the summit? The ultimate mystery, right? Did they make it to the greatest mountain in the world? Did they get to the top? And then Sandy Irvine, young kid, 22 years old, his parents left the back door of their house open, unlocked for 3 years, just in case Sandy came home. Like the ultimate sacrifice. Like, wow. Oh my God. And did they make it? And then in 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing, we know they made it because they came home, they had a photograph on the summit, they lived. But with the greatest, if it was the third highest mountain in the world, whatever. But this is the biggest mountain in the world. So now we're like out there, the great mystery. Who really summited first? And a lot of people, especially people in England, really wanted to know. And in 1999, an expedition was put together by the BBC and PBS in the United States, and that's my entree into true, being paid to be a high-altitude cinematographer. I get hired to go along, and what our goal is we want to go and try to find the body or bodies of George Mallory and Sandy Irvine. And now, look at what these guys are wearing in 1924. Wool, silk, leather boots. Amazing that these guys would go into the death zone, the bitter, absolute, just chillingly cold altitude and new heights, wearing these things. They had nothing. And so George is second from the left in the back, and then Sandy in the far left in the back. And those are the guys that we were after. So I get to Kathmandu, somebody hands me a piece of paper, they're like, sign this. Well, what is it? It's the body disposal form. I'm like, what? Hold on. Yeah. So if you die, we want to know how you want your body disposed of. And I just thought that was really obscure, and it freaked me out because I've been in epics before, but so you could be thrown in a crevasse, you could be burned at a funeral pyre in base camp if you could get your body down there, or you could be repatriated back home to your family, which was really expensive, and I was already on the outs with my wife. I had quit my job to be on this expedition, so repatriation was out because she probably would have refused the special delivery. So I went with the funeral pyre, And I just said, God, please don't ever have to use this form. But there I was, 75 years later, in the same spot of the last photograph of Mallory and Irvine, with these gigantic boots on, crampons on my feet, and at the time, 20 years ago, a pretty modern video camera that was put together so I could go all the way to the summit if needed and film with that, with the wind block on the microphone and everything. And our goal was to start at the North Col, where Mallory and Irvine were last seen, and head up that beautiful white ridge there, up into the vast north face, and search for their bodies. Now, the bodies we thought would be cool to find, but you're not really going to know if anybody summited the mountain by seeing a telltale smile on their face or anything like that frozen in. What we were really after was the Kodak vest pocket camera. We know that Mallory and Irvine actually had one of these cameras with them because Mallory actually had forgotten his, and he passed a team coming down from an unsuccessful summit bid, and he took the camera from Howard Somerville. He said, I need your camera. And that he took it, put it in his pocket, and their next stop was High Camp, and then they left for the summit the next day. So our goal was to fan out across this beautiful, great north face looking where we thought we might have a good shot at finding the bodies. Now, if you look, there's the second step, kind of in the far right, and obviously the summit where the yellow line ends. The second step is a 60-foot vertical dihedral that would stop anybody from getting to the top without really good rock climbing skills. 1924, it would have been pretty much almost impossible for someone actually to get over that, but getting back down even more unlikely. Now today, why do people get over it? Because there's, believe it or not, there's an aluminum ladder in it right now. And that's how people get over the second step. So an ice axe was found in 1933, 9 years after these guys disappeared, an ice axe just seated on a tiny little ledge of snow right on the ridge at 8,500 meters. Like Sandy Irvine's ice axe just sitting there, which to many people, they believe that that's where the beginning of the end started for them. Many people to this day surmise that some accident started there, that the fall began, and that that's where their deaths happened. And obviously you can see how steep the north face is, that they're not going to just lay down like that ice axe. They're going to go boom, 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 way down. So our goal was to look in that big white area where you see the red line on the bottom. That was more or less where we were looking. And the yellow line is what people use to actually summit. So nobody ever goes into the north face unless they're dead, and there are many bodies in there dead, but or they're crazy, and we were kind of crazy, so we went in there looking. The morning of May 1st, 1999, this is Jake Norton, an amazing mountain climber with his oxygen apparatus on. You see the full moon setting, the sun casting a shadow of Mount Everest into the atmosphere. Absolutely gorgeous day, but brittle. 30-mile-an-hour winds, probably 30 below zero. I'm not sure what that is. In centigrade, anybody can do any? Pretty cold. Yeah, it was cold. And filming was just murderous, and to get the camera out and get these shots. And I was filming it, obviously, but also taking stills. So now here we are just tagging into the death zone. It's about 8,000 meters in elevation. Now these guys look pretty good, right? Like do-do-do, walking with their big backpacks on. This is what it looks like to climb in the death zone. And you're gonna, this I can predict what you're gonna think, but I'll tell you what I think you will think in a minute. But this is really what it's like. Oh. Oh, oh my God. Like, it's like that, agonizingly slow. And the oxygen you sucking on that mask on your face for every bit of oxygen to try to bring the O's into your brain so your body can function. Like, why do it, right? What's the point? You know, I told you I like Sufferfest, so this This is the ultimate in suffering. You lose your oxygen up there, not a lot of chance that you're going to live very long. So here we are in the death zone. We stop at the camp last occupied by Mallory and Irvine. This is at 8,200 meters, the highest camp in the world. Only 4 summits in the world are higher than this camp. So we drop our equipment there. You can see this, the telltale second step, that sharp ridge to the left of the summit cone. That's where we think something happened and turned them around. So here's Andy Politz fanning out across the north face about where I showed you. That yellow thing in his backpack is a metal detector. So if we find a body, maybe we can look around and see if the camera might have fallen out, and hopefully we can find some blip, some sense of where they might have fallen, and then locate the camera. And then late in the morning, Conrad Anker, one of the great climbers of our era, stumbles upon the body of George Lee Mallory at almost 27,000 feet, so about 8,200 meters. And so as we approached the body, I was really torn. I was so overwhelmed with awe to be not only in the presence of one of the greatest mountain climbers and explorers in the world, but a human being who had died, who had 3 kids, who had given up everything to try to be the greatest climber, the man who made it first. And I literally walked up within about 20 feet of his body, and I just got down and I just thought, I have no right. I have no right to touch him. Like, who the hell am I? I'm just this high altitude cameraman, and I'm gonna go poke around and dig into his pockets, and I felt like a pillager. I was really, really torn. And this guy here, Andy, he looks at me, he starts laughing. He goes, I knew you'd have a moral dilemma with this one. And he goes, work it out, let me know what you're gonna do, and let's get working. So then I started thinking, George Mallory traveled around the world doing exactly what I'm doing right now, sharing his love of adventure, his desire to push knowledge, to go to places that nobody had ever been before. And he shared it so people could catch that same bug and do it for themselves. But he also had 3 kids, still alive at this time, who had no idea what had happened to him. So in that moment, I thought, it would be irresponsible for me to not do everything in my power to try to find out what happened to him. So we did everything that we could to excavate the area. And the reason you don't see clothing is because 75 years of the sunlight just pounding into the clothes, when you would touch his clothes, they would just turn to dust and float away. It's just like it fell apart from the ultraviolet light over the years and years. Because he must have had an absolutely epic fall. One of his boots was off, but no frostbite on his toes, which is interesting. So maybe he took a really bad fall and something happened, but no frostbite on his toes. Kind of interesting. We looked up around his head for signs of the camera. Nothing. This is Andy kind of picking, rocks up, and then what we did was, look down, you can see his right leg is literally broken in half below the knee, an open wound fracture that coincidentally Andy Politz and I were in an avalanche, and he got the exact same wound about 15 years later, kind of his little channeling of the Mallory thing. And so what we did was we kind of lifted the body up gently, and Andy said, okay, look for the camera. And so I got on my back like a car mechanic would get under an automobile, and I shimmied under, and there, all of a sudden, there's the face of George Lee Mallory. I looked right into his face. And people say, did you know it was him? It was him. That was George Mallory. And what I noticed was over his left eye, there was actually like a hole in his skull. And it's just like, so we had, for me at least, it told me maybe he died really, really quickly. So there was relief there, something I would share with his family. But no camera. But here's his hobnail boot, this incredible, like I wouldn't even shovel my driveway in the winter with boots like that. And he's at 28,000 feet, 8,500 meters, maybe the summit in boots like that. His goggles, he had 2 pair of goggles. We found these in a pocket. Some of the clothing that was falling apart, and also a letter written to him that he had saved, and a watch that was in his pocket with no glass, just completely clear of glass, with the hour hand frozen before the 2. So maybe the watch broke right at that time. He put it in his pocket. Is it possible he got to the second step and wedged his hand in the rock and broke it, put it in his pocket, and went down? I mean, if you're about to die, you wouldn't care if your watch was on your wrist or not, right? So there's like, why would he put it in his pocket? So maybe he was in good shape, maybe he was going, all these clues, but we have no camera. And that's it. We never found the camera. We continued searching. We all made it back. We got down. We did this documentary. BBC and PBS co-released a similar documentary. And home we go. And then I return home to my son. And heaven, God bless my mom, who couldn't take a photograph to save her life. But in this moment, she got the moment that my son, who had forgotten who I was when I got home, that moment that he recognized, Pops is home. So cool. But what happens is, I'm here thinking of George Mallory. I'm looking into my son's face and looking at the face of George Mallory, thinking, this guy disappeared. Now I have the bug. Now I am obsessed with this mystery. Now fast forward 20 years, this year, my buddy Mark Sinnott, a New York Times best-selling author, wrote the book about Alex Honnold, who climbed El Cap, the free solo. He writes a book about him. We live next to each other. He starts talking to me, Pollard, do you think we could find Irvine and solve the mystery? Of course, he's looking for a book project, so I'm like, yeah, sure. Think we should go back? Yeah, I'll always go back. I never say no to a Mount Everest expedition. So Sinnott and I make a blood pact, not literally, that's gross, but we make a blood pact that no matter what, we're going to go back to Everest this year, right? So we just got back a couple of months ago, and we're going to go look for Irvine, where we believe Irvine, that his body is or was. And the only guy you go to for information, beta, on Sandy's whereabouts, is this guy, Thom Holzell. Talk about obsessed with Mount Everest, mad scientist kind of guy. And here he is studying this gigantic blown up aerial photograph of the upper slopes of Mount Everest. And he's written books called The Mystery of Mallory and Irvine. And he's just a guy, he lives for this mystery. So Mark and I go visit him, and he starts to tell us, this is where Sandy Irvine's body is. If you go here, I've got the GPS coordinates. You go here, you will find his body. We're like, come on, crazy old man. And here's the second step is off over here. That blue, greenish blue line represents a normal descent route from any climber climbing Mount Everest. And then you can't really see it too much, but you can see it turns into a little fork to the left. You're supposed to stay on the upper fork. We believe that Irvine and Mallory went down the gully in a whiteout. They took the wrong gully down. And Thom Holzell said, see that red circle? You go there, you'll find him. Like, you're telling me nobody's ever been there? And he goes, oh, no, people have been there before. There are 2 reports of men who actually encountered the body, but they never did anything about it. They didn't know each other. They're almost identical reports. And one of the guys tried to lift the body up and throw him down. So he's loose, he's out there, but nobody goes there. So when you're close to the summit, you're climbing up in the death zone, you don't, like, who cares about Mallory and Irvine? You just want to tag. You want to get to the top, and you're dying up there in the death zone. But we're going to go, and we're going to try to find Sandy Irvine and the camera. Of course, Thom has a camera just like they had, and he's like, this is what you're going to look for, and China's going to arrest you if you find the camera. This is how you hide it, because China doesn't want us to change history. They want the Chinese to be the first to have summited from the north. So they didn't like us being there, so it was top secret. So we bring all of Thom's research with us and we start studying, and how are we going to do this? And now our goal to do this is we're going to forego the summit and we're just going to look for the body. Cool, right? You know, like, let's not let our egos get in the way. We're going for the body. This is a research expedition. So up we go. Mark and I set our tents up next to each other. We're going through our gear, talking about it nonstop. Just going to do the search. If we can tag and get to the summit, cool. Beautiful, beautiful mountain luring us forward. Onward and upward we go through the East Rongbuk Glacier, yaks carrying thousands and thousands of pounds of camera equipment, food, gear, an absolutely stunning place to be. And then we get to advanced base camp at about 7,000 meters or so, study the maps, we make our plan, we're ready to go, we're ready to ascend up into this search area, which is really our only shot because it's so far into the death zone. We'll be so sapped after we do this that there's no way we'll be able to go back for a summit bid. So we wait for the weather. We wait, take pictures, filming, just doing as much as we possibly can, also to let all the other teams filter off the mountain. We made a goal that we're not going to go up into that madness that we're all did anybody see any of those pictures of people in lines on Everest? We're like, nope, when they're done, we'll go. But the risk in doing that was that if the weather's bad after we wait, we're done too. But none of us really wanted to get tangled up in that. We have big egos, but not big enough to go fight in that stuff. So we waited patiently, and then we had our shot and move our way up from advanced base camp to the North Col again, where Mallory and Irvine had last been seen. You can see the line of people headed their way up. Our secret weapon, so we don't have to put boots on the ground, the ever awesome drone, which we all waved to today before the event started. We had several drones with us, and we had gotten a permit from the Chinese government that would allow us to jailbreak the code on the drone and fly it up over 8,000 meters. And our goal was to film as many missions as possible and take hundreds and hundreds of pictures of the North Face in the area where we believed the body was. Now, back in the day, but even in 1999 when I went, you could take a picture and you could zoom in on it and it would get all blurry, but high resolution, we just took picture after picture after picture of details so we could try to zoom in on these photographs to look for the body. Now, we did find bodies, but we still couldn't find any evidence of Irvine in the spot that we were supposed to look. And we spent days go back down to base camp, hanging out, getting ready for our mission. And this is about the area that we're looking. This is where we think Sandy got off course. And just so you know, George Mallory's body, which we had found 20 years ago, was down below, almost in a direct fall line underneath where we were going to look for Sandy. So back we go. It's about May 27th. We start heading up, tell the Sherpas the plan. We're going to go do the search, no summit. And the Sherpas instantly revolted. All of a sudden they talked almost violently in their Sherpa language, and they're like, no expedition. We don't go to the summit, it's over. They were literally all, we didn't even know they were about to revolt here. Let's get a team photo. And they told us after this, they say, if you don't go to the summit, we quit. And so the interesting thing about that is this is their livelihood. So for us to go to the body and not the summit, this is like their capital. For a Sherpa to summit means he'll be hired, or she will be hired the next year. They summit twice, their status goes up. 3 times, their status goes up. They're like, you're not taking that away from us. If you do, we're done. I mean it. So we sat there and for hours and hours sitting on the glacier, and we finally acquiesced and we said, okay, all right, we'll go to the summit first. fine. And they're like, good, okay, let's go. So the next day we get ready to set out, and I experience these physical symptoms that gave me pause, thinking if I go up, I have a feeling something's not right in my body right now. It's, you know, I've been there before previously, but it gave me a reason to worry. So we contacted an altitude physiologist named Peter Hackett, and he goes, Pollard, it's 50-50 that you had a stroke. 50-50, I doubt you did. But if you did, and you go up, and it returns, you're dead. And that would really suck for your buddies. So I stayed down as my friends continued up to the summit. And there you can see Mount Everest off in the background. You can't see it in this photograph, but you could literally see their headlamps flashing in the early morning light. And I watched, gutted, absolutely devastated that I wasn't there with my buddy, Sinnott, who I made the blood pact with. But I listened on the radio, and as I listened, here I am feeling sorry for myself. You poor baby, you can't go to the summit. And I'm like, this is so absurd. Right? I mean, the Sherpa lost their lives in 2014, and then it hit me. I'm like, hold on a second. In 2016, this is 2016, I was on the south side again, looking to do a film on Hillary and Norgay, and I had my shot. And in 2016, I took the opportunity, and I got to the summit. So I had it. I was just getting greedy. And this is me on the summit, having summiting way faster than we ever expected, no crowds, at 2:40 in the morning under a brilliant full moon. And here I am fidgeting with my oxygen in my backpack, spent about 30 minutes on the summit. And in this lifetime of pursuit of Mount Everest, thinking I will reach nirvana, I will achieve enlightenment, I will transcend all of my spiritual desires, when I reached the summit, and it just didn't do it. I was even up there just feeling a little bit kind of disappointed. I mean, I was psyched, like, okay, it's over, man. All right, I'm done now. But I was like, you know, this isn't it, you know? And I felt it. And then on our descent, as I went down, after we, you know, touched the summit and took our pictures, I encountered 3 men who died. They were in their last breaths. And it's just like, so now I'm in this immense quandary. I just reached, literally and figuratively, the high point of my life. And then I encounter 3 people who died, having gone for the summit, having just given it all. And I crawled back into my tent at 26,000 feet, right about 8,000 meters. And I crawled in and I just sobbed. I'll never, ever feel joy about this, ever. This is the worst day of my life. I was just devastated. And it took me until this expedition in 2019, just this spring, for me to gain that perspective back that, of course, right? It's not the summit that we're really after. It's all the good stuff we get to do in the process. So right here we are. This is me, not me, rather. These are Renan Ozturk's photographs. You can see them making their way up toward the summit. The sun rises. They're at about 8,500, maybe 8,600 meters right here, looking down into the Kangshung face. This is Mark on the final approach to the summit, oxygen bottle. Now remember, so Mark's plan is he's going to tag, get to the top, take a breath, and then he's going to go off alone and look for Irvine. Everybody else was just absolutely baked up there. But Sinnott, after getting to the top, 4 of my team and 8 Sherpa made it at about 7:10 in the morning. Here's Mark seated at the top. And now the ultimate reason for us being there. They start to walk back down on the fixed ropes, and Mark unclips from the fixed line, and the Sherpa were like, no, 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 you don't get off the fixed lines, what the hell is, like they freaked out, and Mark's like, no, you don't understand. Like this, we got to go look for. No, I mean he didn't want to tell him, but so Mark unclips and they're yelling at him. No, very dangerous, very dangerous. He's like, bye bye, and off he goes, straight down this 45 to 60 degree slope to go to the exact spot where Sandy was supposed to be. He fans across, he finds the spot, nothing. Like, oh my God, we had a blood pact. We gave up our lives practically to do this expedition. And he goes all the way down through this area, looking in every nook and cranny, ultimately settling on that little slot down there. Nothing. Holy cow, talk about anticlimactic, right? So we get back down, we hit base camp, we start to talk about this, and it's like it was so fitting, so absolutely perfect that we did not find him. He might be up there. I don't think he is. I think an avalanche washed him away, but how fitting. The mystery, the greatest mystery in the world, in terms of exploration, is right there on that mountain. The greatest mystery in the world is inside of us. We'll never solve it. It's impossible to achieve it. You can't get to the summit and be done. So the path, really, is the destination. That's it. That's the answer. We can achieve all our dreams and all of our goals, but it's never going to make us happy. This is it. It's the path. Succeed or fail. And that to me was solving the mystery. That the mystery will never be solved. And the cool part is, got my buddy, we had a blood pact, and he said the ultimate goal of this expedition is to come home alive. We got kids at home, and we made it. And now Mark is writing a book about it, and someday you'll be able to read it, and I'm in it. Hopefully he's not, unkind to me in it, but he did tell a lot of jokes about me. But anyway, I want to thank you guys all so very much for taking the time to listen to my adventure, and I hope someday I can listen to yours as well someday. So thanks very much. Yeah, thank you. There you go.